replace the jurors as, from the lowest number to the highest number, the first one picked to the last one picked.
I get all that.
The reason
the process it just seems very unique.
Yeah, but understand, Rittenhouse doesn't know who he's picking. They put those names in the tumbler. He's picking out numbers. The numbers, don't relate as far as he's concerned to like named jurors. So it's like the lottery. He doesn't really know which 6 are coming out.
Governor Walker, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I've actually been on a jury trial before, not in a criminal case, but in a civil case. I was the 13th juror at the end when they went to deliberation. Both attorneys agreed to take me off, so I didn't ultimately make the decision. But it's not necessarily the practice on cases like that. So I think a lot of people found that interesting. The other thing to remember is some people have made a big deal about this judge and made some comments about him. He was appointed in 1983 when I was in school by a Democrat governor by the name of Tony Earl. He comes from Kenosha County, which is a blue-collar but typically Democrat county. And as I mentioned before, I think the bottom line you got to remember, people there understood what happened last year. And so when that attorney, the prosecutor, pointed the gun at the jury, which was unconventional, I think a lot of people, that might backtrack. A lot of those people remember what things were like last year and how they might have reacted and under those tragic and unfortunate circumstances.
So, John, we're watching the courtroom now. Oh, the judge is back. Let's listen in.
In a similar situation, and the extra jurors were, all they had to watch was daytime TV, and I'm afraid I can't even arrange that for you. But I don't know, maybe there was something about some movies or something, wasn't there? I hope they appeal to everyone.
Yo, what kind of fucking trial is this, bro? What?
Well, anyway, we'll see what we can do to give you some kind of entertainment. And but in the meantime, please adhere to those rules, and we're not going to sequester anybody or anything at this particular point. So, and I hope that they have a comfortable place arranged. I understand they do. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am. Are we allowed to get our belongings? Yes, in fact, I'm having the bailiff escort you up there now. And while you're there, you're not to have any conversation with the other jurors, okay? Anything else? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. And give those to the
it seems like being a juror is like being a hostage. Like you do. Shit.
So there's the answer again on sequestration. It will not happen. And Andy McCarthy was expressing concerns a moment ago on that. Jonna, do you have similar concerns if the jurors, if they don't reach a verdict today or tomorrow, they're going home every night, the possibility of being exposed to what's happening on the outside? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a little too late at this point to really consider it, unless for some reason the deliberations went on exceedingly long. But I think what we're seeing now is the unglamorous life of an alternate. Now they get to sit and twiddle their thumbs. They don't get to deliberate. They don't get to do anything. They can't even watch regular TV. And now it begins.
Donna, what is it like today for Kyle Rittenhouse as he sits and waits?
He's an 18-year-old kid. This happened when he was 17. He has been, he is one juror away from spending life in prison potentially. And it's got to be incredibly nerve-wracking. It's also, he, in a sense, he's a little bit of an icon for those of us who believe that he did mount a very good self-defense. I was listening to Tucker last night. Dana Lash said self-defense is on trial here. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I also think it's very interesting. We all learned a little bit about the prosecution's case here, and I was really struck on how much he, I think, potentially confused these jurors, how wrong he was on the law, how he tried to say that, a dumpster fire is just a little dumpster fire, when arson is never peaceful. Arson should never be, simply swept under the rug like it's just a little minor inconvenience. And the way he portrayed what was happening in Kenosha, I think, is really disheartening and horrible.
Well, just on those points there, Andy, everybody's right now because we don't have an answer on this, so every opinion matters. There was some criticism directed toward the judge. A lot of people felt that he was pro-defense. A lot of people have lashed out at the prosecutor saying that he's lost in this case. Do you concur with either A or B? And if so, where does that lead you in your own legal logic?
Oh, damn. I feel so sorry for this guy. Like, he's scared shitless.
Picture of Judge Schroeder, because what we got to see was he get very angry at prosecutors who really did things that would get any judge angry. To go on the third rail of commenting on a defendant's Fifth Amendment privilege on staying silent, to comment on things that had been ruled against the prosecution and to bring them up anyway without the court's permission. Any judge would get upset about that. And what I thought was not being included in the picture of the judge was the fact that he could have thrown the prosecution's case out when the state rested, and he didn't. He waited till the last second to throw out that misdemeanor possession count, and he never threw it out on grounds that I thought he could have thrown it out on from the beginning, which is that it was an unconstitutionally vague charge. It wasn't until they actually were able to measure the gun and see that they finally said, okay, is that the case? But what I'm saying is he left charges in the case that give the prosecution a chance to win a case that they should lose. So I don't think he's a pro-defense judge, and I don't think he's a pro-government judge. I think he's a judge. This is not an easy case. He's doing the best he can. I don't agree with everything he's done. I think he should have given, the prosecutors made some very wild legal arguments in the summation. I was very surprised the defense didn't get up and object to them, and I'm surprised the judge, didn't stop the prosecutor and tell the jury, clarity on what the law is.
Governor, tell me about Kenosha, and the community has been obviously through a lot in this last year, and the fact that they have 500 National Guard troops on standby today might have them on edge, but as a town, a community, your experience there?
Yeah, it's a tough town. It's gone through a lot over the decades. The AMC and Chrysler plants were there and closed down. It's a very blue-collar area, traditionally Democrat, but kind of that blue dog Democrat. And of all the places you could have seen riots, it was most shocking in Kenosha, most frustrating, because I think a lot of people felt like people rioted, many from outside of the area, well before they knew all the facts. I mentioned last year, not only Tony Evers, the Democrat governor, but even Joe Biden's comments. The Kenosha News, which traditionally endorses Democrats in those big races, came out with an editorial criticizing the Democrat governor and, in a way, indirectly, Joe Biden for just pouring fuel on the flames last year. They were very frustrated with what happened in an otherwise pretty quiet, pretty tame, pretty blue-collar community.
Thanks to all three of you. Stand by, as the judge said a moment ago, Andy McCarthy and Jonna Spilborn and Governor Scott Walker. Thank you very much to all three of you.
Hi, I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way.
All right, so that's what Fox News has to say. Let's see what the fuck NBC is saying about this shit, because this is going to be interesting. Watch the disparity between the two news companies here. So we got NBC, Rittenhouse trial. Let's watch the first video. Defense rest. I'm looking for opinion pieces. There are no opinion pieces here. Oh, this right here. Don Lemon always has an opinion about every fucking thing. So let's look at the difference between Fox News and CN fucking N.
Defense resting his case in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, who shot and killed Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum. And
already I can tell. Yeah, I know what time it is.
Using an AR-15 style rifle during protests last summer.
Because that's the problem.
Following the police
AR-15
shooting of Jacob Blake. Remember, he came across the line too young to legally carry that weapon.
He was not too young to legally carry it.
This time, the 18-year-old defendant.
Okay. Too young to carry the weapon. Cross state lines with the weapon. Both of these are completely untrue. He was too young to purchase the weapon. He's not too young to have the weapon in his possession with somebody who was older than him being the person to give him the weapon and be there with him. Both of which are proven to be true. Somebody gave him the weapon. He gave the money to someone else to buy it, who then turned around and gave him the weapon as long as that person was with him, and they were with him. So boom, legal. Carried it across state lines. He didn't carry it across state lines. The person who gave it to him carried it across state lines. So, or even then, the person who he crossed state lines, but the person who gave it to him, they don't have to worry about that. So that's also a non-factor. Then what was the next one? He said, oh, he brought it with him because he thought it looked cool. I believe his exact statements were, he bought the gun. He gave the guy the money to get the gun because he thought the gun looked cool. Because the guy had a gun just like the one that Rittenhouse wanted him to buy. So already, in the first 26 fucking seconds, you're lying your ass off. Sensationalism. Trying to go ahead and convince people that this kid's the fucking devil. Man, all y'all can suck my dick. Fuck out of here. But let's hear the rest.
Didn't take the stand, so there were no tears today. But what we saw was really unbelievable. But the judge
didn't take the stand, so there were no tears today in a condescending tone. Jesus Christ. Look, usually I do listen to CNN about shit, but when it comes to like this shit right here, they're just completely wrong. I hate to say it, but Fox News is absolutely correct on their coverage with this trial and standing up for Second Amendment rights. CNN will always be a lousy pile of shit when it comes to your rights, especially if it goes against like the leftist agenda. Me, myself, I'm not a leftist. I'm more of a centralist. I believe everyone should be able to do what the fuck they want, when they want, however the fuck they want, without government involvement. But hey, what do I know? I'm black.
asking the jury to leave the room twice for the second day in a row while he got into it with the prosecutor.
It certainly was my impression that we were talking about video of the entire episode, and not that it certainly in my mind was not limited to the specific numbers on this observation point list that you're talking about. I'm a little bit challenged when you say, is there something that I'm saying that draws the face that you're making? Go ahead, say what you want to say.
I have to say, Your Honor, yesterday I was the target of your ire for disregarding your orders. Today, the defense is disregarding your order. Yesterday, as I said, I was under the court's ire.
You know, I don't want to talk about.
Well,
why don't
I
we just?
I think it's a fundamental fairness issue, Your Honor.
All right, say what you want to say.
If I'm being held to obey the court's orders, I'm asking that the defense be held to that too. This is something we litigated at a Daubert hearing. We spent time on this.
You know, I am going to interrupt you, and then I'm going to let you talk again. But I was talking yesterday about the Constitution of the United States and how the Supreme Court has interpreted it for 50 years. That's not what we're talking about here today.
This is the second day of this. And then there was this moment, arguing over a witness's possible bias in painting a pretty rosy picture of Kyle Rittenhouse.
Does Real America's Voice have any sort of political bias or agenda or anything like that?
What is it about?
It goes to the bias of the witness, Your Honor.
The bias in what respect? I assume that people, as I commented at the beginning, this is not a political trial, and I don't know how you would isolate a person's particular politics and determine that that person is going to evaluate the evidence one way or another.
Has he not done any background or research on this whole thing? It's not a political trial. Okay, maybe in one sense, but if... And some of this is on the prosecutor, too. Look, I don't know what kind of pressure they're under, but maybe the prosecutor should have been stronger against the judge and tried to make his case. But if you put a witness on the stand that has said favorable things about the defendant and biased things against the people who he's accused of injuring and killing. And then who gets, the dead people can't tell their story. Let's remember that this is a judge who told prosecutors before the trial began that he wouldn't allow them to call the Rittenhouse, the people Rittenhouse shot, victims. But he would allow the defense to call them arsonists and looters.
Okay, that right there I don't agree with.
Let the evidence show what the evidence shows, and if the evidence shows that any or more than one of these people were engaging in arson, rioting, or looting, then I'm not going to tell the defense they can't call them that. The word victim is a loaded word. And I think alleged victim.
So this guy makes perfect sense when he says this, though, because when you call someone a victim, you're already suggesting that they are innocent of any culpability for the reason that whatever the fuck happened to them, right? He's saying that you can't do that. You can't just sit there and try to like narrate shit before everything comes out. You can't just call somebody, well, the victim was shot 42 times. Your Honor, the victim killed 4 children and got shot 42 times by police officers. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't call motherfuckers a victim until, like, you know the full story. You can't just say victim. Like a shooting victim, actually, nah. You can't say victim. But like, when you say someone's a shooting victim, it has a lot more, it's like a lot different if you say like shooting victim, whereas a murder victim. Like, it's like they're both victims, but in 2 separate situations. One of them carries more weight than the other, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So like, I agree that you shouldn't be able to call them victims when you're trying to prove the innocence of a person, or when you're trying to prove that someone's guilty and you call them a victim, it's kind of like, Then again, shooting victim. I mean, they were victims of a shooting, but that is insanely loaded and can convince anybody that a shooting victim is, an innocent person when they might not be. But he did say that if someone was like actually looting and committing arson and everything like that, you should be able to call them arsonists or whatever. So I guess that's kind of biased in a way. Yeah, that's pretty biased. But if the fact shows that they were looting and they were committing arson, and you can call them arsonists or looters, and the facts show that they got shot, you should be able to call them shooting victim. Oh shit, is that a bounty hunter? Get up, bitch! Yup, bounty hunters. Why do y'all keep coming back here? Didn't I kill y'all the last time? Fucking pieces of shit. Alright, there you go. Ooh, no dead eye. Come on. Come on. Over here somewhere.
Yeah, you're gonna die.
Oh, you still on that horse, huh? He's dead in the saddle. And there he goes. But yeah, not being able to call them, what do you call it? Wait, you're not dead yet? Hold up. Yeah, there you go. I'm trying to loot you, sir. But anyway, not being able to call them like victims, like shooting victims, it's a little jacked up. We're really gonna talk about it. All right, I can't loot you, so I'm just gonna leave you alone. Yeah, it's hella jacked up. Because technically they were victims. They were shooting victims. But they weren't like victims in the sense that they were like completely innocent of shit. So I don't know. That's so that's like a complicated term. Like calling someone a looter and an arsonist. That's not that complicated. But calling someone a victim, maybe you should allow them to be called shooting victims. Nah, but even then, damn, I don't even know. Can't touch that one. I can't say he was right or he was wrong. Next
is a cousin to it.
Looter's not loaded, though. Ryder's not loaded? What about alleged? What about the dead people who can't speak for themselves? During 8 days of testimony in the trial, jurors heard from 31 different witnesses. The judge told jurors that closing arguments and jury instructions in the trial are expected on Monday. Each side will have 2.5 hours total for their closing arguments. I want to discuss today with Patrick Cafferty, a criminal defense attorney who represented Jacob Blake, and his shooting by Kenosha police officer set off the unrest that led to Rittenhouse fatally shooting 2 men. Also back with me tonight is Paul Booker. Paul Booker knows everything about that area. He's a former district attorney for Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Good to see both of you. Thank you both for joining. Patrick, let me start with you because, we could talk about all the questions of bias swirling around. One of the defense's witnesses was, an Arizona-based commentator who works for far right-wing media outlet. He testified that he was in Kenosha to track Antifa and Black Lives Matter when the shootings happened. That is political. The judge says that he's trying to keep politics out of this case. You know this judge. What do you think of this decision or his comments?
So, Don, thanks for letting me join you tonight. As far as politics are concerned,
I swear the interesting thing is that there are two sides of the same coin when you think about it. Fox News and CNN. CNN being left wing, Fox News being right wing. They're both on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're just like, meh, 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 meh. And then you got motherfuckers who are in the middle that's like, I don't know which one of y'all niggas to listen to. Real shit.
And what I'm focused on as a trial lawyer observing this is what the potential political orientation of each of the jurors is going to be. So right now you have 18 jurors. It's going to be narrowed down to 12. Kenosha County is very diverse, but it's pretty easy to identify what people's political orientation is based on which part of the county they come from. So I-94 splits Kenosha right up the middle. The west end of Kenosha County votes the same way that Utah does. The east end basically votes the same way that Chicago does. Democrat. And eventually you're going to have this down to 12 people. Right now you have 10 females. Statistically, females are lean toward being Democrats. You have 8 males, one of whom is of color. Statistically, men lean toward being Republican. So once they spin people out randomly, the gender breakdown here is going to be huge because of the likelihood that that will identify which political party the individual jurors are oriented toward.
So what is that?
I think
So as relates to today, then he is saying this is not political, and there is a witness who clearly works for a political organization who's there to track a group that has been part of political discussions. So what does that square that circle for me?
So again, from my perspective, this is about what the jurors heard. There's been a lot of focus on things that have occurred outside the presence of the jury. So the judge talking to the prosecutor and what people perceive to be a harsh tone, things of that nature. The jury didn't hear any of that. So the likelihood is that will have no effect on the jury. As far as the judge excluding the bias of the news organization that this gentleman was from, he basically let the prosecutor get to the bias in a different way by basically asking or allowing him to ask whether this person had posted things that were pro-Rittenhouse. So I think that he allowed for the prosecutor to get to that issue without actually identifying which party the witness is oriented toward. I mean, generally speaking, judges
identify the
don't
body now,
want
bitch.
politics to be part of a criminal case. They want the jury to focus
Mhm,
on
the blood is
the
leaking out
facts
of
of the
his
case,
arteries,
apply
and
the
veins
law to
there
the facts of the case,
neck.
and come up with a decision.
But it's not like
And
the
that's what
prosecutor
they
was
did.
asking if you're a Republican or a Democrat. He's asking me if you have written things or posted things that are favorable to Kyle Rittenhouse and that are not favorable towards another group. I don't see what he wasn't saying you're Republican, Democrat, and Independent. He's just asking a straight out flat question. The judge stopped him. Why? I don't understand that. Do you think that the prosecutor there's a method to this? You said is he poking him? Is he going for something by trying to get under the judge's skin possibly?
Well, that was suggested by one individual that they're trying to throw the case, but I don't believe that's the situation. They could easily have done that. But I just feel like he's listening. For instance, I would have come back after the noon hour yesterday and apologized to the judge. Not in front of the jury. But obviously he did something that the judge didn't like. And the judge is a judge. He's the one that runs the court. So I just don't see that deal, if you will, in the prosecutor's presentation of the case. And I just don't think they're hearing that the judge is not happy with the government. And you need to adjust. You should not leave on the fly. You have to be able to do that. And I've done it, and I'm sure Patrick's done it.
Good job.
When things, you can kind of see that this isn't working very well, I better try another tack.
There we go.
You won't feel a thing.
You won't either.
Eric, you have covered so many high-profile trials, and yesterday in the courtroom, we sort of had a visceral reaction to an incident in the courtroom when, during closing arguments, the prosecutor raised up the actual AR-15 rifle that Rittenhouse had used and pointed the rifle at people in the courtroom after asking on the mic, make sure the gun is empty. What do you make of that?
Well, my initial...
Another example of like crazy sensationalism. Okay, so you're telling me that this guy's in the wrong for saying, no, okay, no. Wait, what you're trying to stress is that, like, oh, for him to say before he points a gun or before he shows a gun to people, for him to say, make sure it's loaded, you know, being that he's a prosecutor, it's, oh my goodness, it's, you know, trying to instill fear into these people, trying to make them feel a certain type of way. And if it was a defense, then you'd be like, okay, that's common sense. It's common fucking sense to clear a gun before you handle it. What do you mean? Shut the fuck up.
reaction was, does he have the experience and the acumen to make sure it's not chambered? Does he understand
This sounds
how
like
to
such
make that a safe
bullshit, bro.
situation
Like, come
before
on,
he
man.
points a gun at 12 people? Because regardless of what the guy in the little blue gloves does, I didn't hear him in the courtroom be deposed and say, are you certain that this gun is blah, 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 blah? Are you certain this is on the record? Like, I want to see something like that. On the heels of what we've seen on a movie set in the last 60 days with Alec Baldwin, I think it's more than fair to say, let's make sure that this is a safe situation. And then just, I don't know, you're an attorney. We've been in a courtroom situation, Emily.
You gotta
What
be
good
shitting
does
me.
it do to point the gun
The
at
horse
the
bumps
jury?
into you and
I
you
mean, if
decide to
you're
kill
trying to
me.
say, and I know that this
Yeah, the
was the
Wild West was a
prosecution's
time- it was a
argument,
wild time.
that Kyle Rittenhouse was the aggressor. Well, now the only person who
No, I
looks like
lost
an
all the
aggressor
shit
to
that I
me
just
is
farmed.
Thomas Binger,
Oh my God.
the prosecutor, who, by the way, didn't even take the safety of himself into his own hands. Like, I would want to look at that gun.
dirty, rotten
And if you
bastards.
don't have the experience in that moment to be
You
able to
pay
do
this
that,
bounty off
put
real
it down. I don't need that much drama. I don't think the courtroom needs that much drama. And he's backfired on himself so many times, no pun intended with that use of words, but it is. It's a reverb on him, his mistakes. What's he going for here? Is this like the 11th hour last-ditch effort
Hey, what you doing?
with a gun?
I mean, at a minimum, he broke a fundamental rule of gun safety, which is don't point the weapon at anything you're not prepared to shoot. And secondly, I think, without pun intended, he shot himself in the foot by that antic that absolutely backfired to all of the points that you made with safety is the fundamental concern, with the tragedy on the heels of this trifold tragedy that this trial centers around. For him to do that in the courthouse, it did him no favors.
He gave that courtroom a visual of what an aggressor looks like, and I don't think
with his face attached.
With his face,
yeah.
yes.
And Pete, I'd like to show for you another antic on the prosecutor's part here, where he attacked the defendant's emotional testimony, and then he praised the rioters in Kenosha last year. Take a watch.
He showed no remorse.